When it comes to building muscle, most people overcomplicate the process. They chase magic programs, secret supplements, and random workout trends. But the truth is, muscle growth is about applying a few simple science-based techniques consistently. If you want to grow faster and smarter, you need to stop guessing and start following principles that actually work. Let's break down how. First, training volume is the single most powerful driver of muscle growth. What does that mean? It means the total number of hard sets you do for a muscle per week is what dictates progress. Not one workout, not one exercise, but the sum of quality work over time. If you're stuck doing just 3 sets of curls once a week, your arms aren't going to grow much. But if you build that up to 12, 15, maybe 20 quality sets across the week, spread across different sessions, you'll see growth. The body responds to repeated stimulus, not random effort. Second, progression is non-negotiable. Your muscles don't care that you showed up at the gym. They care that you gave them a reason to adapt. That reason is overload. You need to gradually increase the weight, the reps, or the number of hard sets over weeks and months. If you lifted the same weight for the same reps last year as you are today, you haven't actually trained. You've just moved weights around. True growth comes when the muscles are asked to do just a little more than last time, consistently. Third, you need to recover like you mean it. Training is the spark, but recovery is the fuel. Without enough sleep, without proper nutrition, you're leaving gains on the table. Sleep is where your body repairs and grows. Protein is what your muscles are literally built from, and calories provide the energy to fuel the whole process. You can train like a beast, but if you sleep 5 hours and skip meals, your results will look like you trained half as hard. Recovery isn't optional. It's part of the program. And finally, technique matters more than ego. Perfect form ensures the muscle you want to grow is actually doing the work. If you're swinging, bouncing, and jerking weights around, you're just exercising, not training. Training is controlled, deliberate, and targeted. On a bigger chest, then every rep should actually hit your chest, not your shoulders or triceps. Want bigger quads? Stop turning squats into a weird half good morning movement. Train with intent, and the right muscles will grow. The bottom line, muscle growth isn't about complexity. It's about execution. Apply the right amount of volume, keep progressing over time, prioritize recovery, and train with precision. If you do those 4 things, you'll stop spinning your wheels and finally start seeing the kind of growth you've been chasing. Simple science applied consistently beats random effort every single time. When people talk about training, they often think about single workouts, what exercise they're going to do today, how many sets, how many reps, whether they're going heavy or light, and that's fine, but here's the problem. Muscles don't grow from a single workout. They grow from the repeated accumulation of effort over weeks, months, and years. That's why training volume, the total amount of hard work you do for a muscle group across a given period, usually a week, is the single most powerful driver of muscle growth. It's not sexy, it's not a quick hack, but it's the reality of how the human body works. Think about it like this. If you wanted to learn a language, would you study for 10 hours once a month and then expect to be fluent? No, of course not. You'd make small, repeated efforts over and over again. The same thing happens in the gym. If you smash your chest with 20 sets on Monday and then don't train it again for 3 weeks, you're not actually creating consistent stimulus. You're just doing one giant, exhausting, inefficient workout. Muscles respond best to repeated, quality stimulus spread out over time. That's training volume. Now, what counts as volume? Volume is the number of hard sets you do per muscle group per week, taken to a challenging effort, usually somewhere near failure within a few reps of it. And here's where people go wrong. Some do way too little volume, thinking a few sets here and there will cut it. Others do way too much, thinking endless junk volume is the key. The truth is somewhere in the middle. For most people, the minimum effective volume, the lowest amount that actually produces noticeable growth, is about 10 hard sets per muscle per week. That means if you want to grow your back, you need around 10 challenging sets of back work divided across your week. But the maximum recoverable volume, the most you can do before your body can't keep up, is probably around 20 to 25 sets for most trained lifters. That doesn't mean you should always aim for the max. It means you should aim to live in that productive zone between about 10 and 20 sets per muscle per week and adjust based on how you're recovering and progressing. If you're doing 6 sets a week for chest and wondering why it's not growing, the answer is obvious. You're not doing enough. If you're hammering out 30 sets a week and your joints hurt, your strength is going down and you're exhausted, that's too much. A smart way to think about it is this. Start with a moderate amount, maybe 12 sets per week for a muscle, split into 2 or 3 sessions. Do that consistently, track your progress, and see how you respond. If you're growing, great, stay there until progress slows down. If you're not growing, bump it up by a couple sets per week and see what happens. Over time, you'll find the sweet spot where you're training hard enough to force adaptation, but not so much that you're digging yourself into a recovery hole. And remember, volume isn't just numbers on paper, it's about quality. 10 sloppy sets where you stop 5 reps short of failure aren't the same as 10 focused hard sets where you're actually challenging the muscle. The body doesn't count sets, it counts stimulus. Every set has to mean something. If you just go through the motions, you might as well be doing cardio. True training volume comes from pushing the muscle close enough to its limit that it has no choice but to adapt. Another big mistake people make is stacking all their volume into one session. They'll do 15 sets of back in one day and then nothing for the rest of the week. The problem with that is simple. After a certain point in a workout, the quality of your set starts dropping. You're tired, your technique slips, and you're not recruiting muscle fibers as effectively. Research shows that the growth stimulus per set starts to taper off after about 6 to 8 hard sets for one muscle in a single workout. That means it's much more effective to spread your volume across 2 or 3 sessions per week. Instead of one brutal chest day, do chest work 2 or 3 times a week, 5 to 8 hard sets each session. You'll recover better, train harder, and stimulate more growth. There's also the question of individual differences. Some people recover faster, handle more volume, and thrive on higher workloads. Others get beat up easily and need to be more conservative. That's why volume is a range, not a fixed number. You have to experiment. If you add sets and your progress accelerates, you're probably moving closer to your optimal volume. If you add sets and your strength drops, your sleep gets worse, or you feel run down, you've overshot. The sweet spot is highly personal, but the principles are universal. You need enough volume to grow, not so much that you can't recover. So if you want to boost muscle mass faster and smarter, don't just think about what you're doing today. Think about the week, the month, the progression. Are you consistently giving each muscle group 10 to 20 quality sets per week, spread across multiple sessions, performed close to failure and tracked over time? If yes, you're in the right lane. If no, that's your bottleneck. Fixing your training volume is like fixing the foundation of a house. Once it's solid, everything else becomes more effective. Your recovery, your nutrition, your progression, all of it works better when volume is dialed in. The bottom line is that volume is the engine of hypertrophy. Without enough, you won't grow. With too much, you'll burn out. But when you hit that optimal range consistently with quality effort, that's when the magic happens. Not overnight, not in a week, but month after month, year after year. That's the secret to building real, lasting muscle. Simple, science-based training volume done right. When it comes to building muscle, there's one principle that stands above all the rest. If you don't get this one right, nothing else matters. You can have the perfect diet, the best recovery routine, the most advanced supplement stack, but without this, you'll spin your wheels forever. That principle is progressive overload. Simply put, progressive overload means doing more over time. Your muscles adapt to the stress you put on them. If the stress doesn't increase, there's no reason for your muscles to grow. Think about it. If you're benching 145 pounds for 10 reps today, and you're still benching 35 pounds for 10 reps a year from now, do you really expect your chest to be bigger? Of course not. Why would it be? The body is an adaptation machine. It only grows when it has to. If you keep giving it the same challenge, it will just maintain. Progressive overload is the signal to the body that it needs to build bigger, stronger muscles. Without it, you're just exercising, not training. Exercising makes you sweat. Training makes you better. Now, overload doesn't mean maxing out every session or crushing yourself into the ground. It means gradual, consistent increases in performance. That can happen in several ways. You can add weight to the bar. You can add reps with the same weight. You can add sets across the week. You can improve your form, slow your tempo, reduce rest times. All of these are ways of doing more. The key is that the muscles have to perceive the workload as harder than before. Most people think overload is just about adding weight. And while that's a very effective method, it's not the only one. In fact, for a lot of lifters, especially once they're past the beginner stage, progression comes from small incremental changes. Instead of trying to slap 20 extra pounds on the bar every week, think about adding a rep here, a few pounds there, over months. That's real progression. It's not flashy, but it works. If you're patient and consistent, those little improvements add up to big gains over time. Let's put it into perspective. Imagine you squat 225 pounds for 8 reps today. Over the course of a training cycle, you slowly build that to 25 for 12 reps. That's 4 extra reps with the same weight, serious progress. Then you bump the weight to 20-35 and start building that from 8 reps upward again. A year later, you're squatting 20-75 for 10. That's overload. That's how your quads, glutes, and hamstrings are forced to grow. It's not magic. It's not complicated. It's just showing up and demanding more from your body than you did last time. But here's where people get it wrong. Some try to rush it. They load up way too much weight, butcher their form, and call it progression. That's not overload. That's ego lifting. The muscles don't care how much weight is on the bar if you're bouncing, cheating, or shifting the work to other muscles. True overload is when the target muscle is doing more quality work than before. That's why strict form matters so much. It's the only way to guarantee the progression is hitting the right muscle. If your biceps curl turns into a weird hip thrust and shoulder shrug, you didn't overload your biceps, you just flailed around with heavier weight. On the other hand, some people never push hard enough to overload. They show up, do the same 3 sets of 10 with the same weight for years, and wonder why they look the same. The answer is simple. No progression, no adaptation, no growth. You don't need to beat your last workout by a mile every time, but you do need to inch forward. A rep here, a little more weight there, a slightly tougher set than last time. Those small steps over weeks and months are what transform your physique. There's also the question of tracking. You can't overload if you don't know what you did last time. Too many people walk into the gym and just wing it. They grab some dumbbells, do a few sets, and leave. But if you want serious results, you need to track. Write down your weights, your reps, your sets. Keep a log, whether it's an app, a notebook, whatever. That way, you know exactly what you did last time, and you know exactly how to beat it next time. Training without tracking is like driving without a map. You might get somewhere, but it won't be where you want to go. Progressive overload also ties directly into recovery. You can only progress if your body has the resources to adapt. That means you need enough sleep, enough protein, and enough calories. If you try to overload every week while undereating and sleeping 5 hours a night, you'll burn out. The magic is in the balance. Push harder in training, then recover harder outside the gym. That cycle of overload and recovery is what builds muscle. The beauty of progressive overload is that it works for everyone. Beginners, intermediates, advanced lifters. Beginners progress faster because their bodies are brand new to training. They can add weight almost every workout. Intermediates need more patience, adding small increments every few weeks. Advanced lifters may only see progress month to month, but the principle is the same. If you're not doing more over time, you're not growing, period. At the end of the day, progressive overload is the law of muscle growth. It's the difference between spinning your wheels and making real progress. It's not about chasing a pump. It's not about sweating buckets. It's not about random workouts. It's about structured, measurable improvement. Do more quality work than you did before, and the muscles will adapt. They have no choice. That's biology. And if you respect that principle, stay patient, and keep building brick by brick, you'll look back a year from now and see a body that's stronger, bigger, and better than you thought possible. Training hard is only half the equation when it comes to building muscle. The other half is recovery. And the truth is, most lifters underestimate just how important recovery and nutrition really are. You can train like an animal, but if you don't recover properly, you'll either stall out or eventually burn out. Muscle growth doesn't actually happen in the gym. It happens when you rest, sleep, and feed your body the fuel it needs to rebuild. Training is the spark, but recovery is the fire. If you don't light that fire, all the training in the world won't make you grow. Let's start with the most overlooked factor, sleep. Sleep is where your body does its best recovery work. Growth hormone release spikes, protein synthesis is elevated, and your nervous system recharges. You can think of sleep as the single most powerful recovery tool you have. If you're sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night, you are slamming the brakes on your gains. Sure, you can survive on low sleep, but you won't thrive. 7 to 9 hours is the sweet spot for most people. That's when you wake up feeling rested, your energy is higher, and your muscles are actually rebuilding from the punishment you gave them in the gym. If you're serious about muscle growth, treat sleep as a non-negotiable part of your program. just like squats and deadlifts. Then we move to nutrition, and the number one nutrient for muscle recovery is protein. Protein provides the amino acids that literally build muscle tissue. If you don't get enough, your body doesn't have the raw material to grow. It's like trying to build a house without bricks. Most lifters should aim for roughly 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight per day. That means if you weigh 80 pounds, you're shooting for about 180 grams of protein spread across the day. That might sound like a lot, but it's the level that consistently produces the best muscle building results. Lean meats, fish, dairy, eggs, and quality protein powders are all great sources. Spread them out evenly so your muscles have a steady supply of building blocks all day long. Calories are just as important. Protein builds muscle, but calories fuel the whole process. If you're in a calorie deficit, your body won't prioritize building muscle. It'll prioritize surviving. That's why lifters who chronically undereat struggle to gain size. No matter how hard they train to grow, you need to be in at least a small calorie surplus. That doesn't mean stuffing your face with junk food, but it does mean eating enough carbs and fats to give your body the energy to train hard and recover fully. Carbs, in particular, are the body's preferred fuel for weight training. They refill your glycogen stores, which are the energy tanks your muscles use during hard sets. Without enough carbs, your workouts suffer, your recovery slows down, and your progress stalls. Hydration is another recovery factor that people overlook. Muscle tissue is mostly water, and even slight dehydration reduces strength and performance. If you're walking around dry and tired, you're sabotaging your gains before you even touch a barbell. A good rule of thumb is to keep your urine light in color. If it's dark, you're behind on fluids. Water is the simplest, cheapest recovery supplement you can get, but it's one that too many lifters ignore. And now, recovery isn't just physical, it's also about managing stress. Training is a stressor, and so is your job, your relationships, your day-to-day life. Your body doesn't separate those stresses, it just adds them all together. If your life is chaotic and stressful, your recovery from training takes a hit. That's why managing stress, getting enough downtime, and finding ways to relax actually make a huge difference in how well you grow. It might sound soft, but it's science. High stress equals poor recovery. Lower stress equals better gains. Let's also talk about training balance. You can't recover if you're always pushing your body past its limits. Training harder and harder without enough recovery is like trying to drive a car without ever stopping for gas. Eventually you run out. The trick is to train hard, then give your body time to bounce back. That might mean resting a day or two per week, deloading every couple of months, or just listening to your body when it's clearly telling you it's fatigued. Pushing through exhaustion isn't hardcore, it's just counterproductive. Real toughness is knowing when to pull back so you can come back stronger. Supplements can play a small role, but they're nowhere near as important as sleep, food, and smart training. Creatine, whey protein, and caffeine are proven, reliable aids. They help, but they're just icing on the cake. If your recovery fundamentals are bad, supplements won't save you. If your fundamentals are solid, supplements can give you a slight edge. Always get the basics right before worrying about the extras. The big picture is simple. Recovery is the multiplier of your training. Every rep you do, every set, every exercise, it all creates the potential for muscle growth. But recovery is what actually turns that potential into real gains. If your recovery is poor, your training only produces fatigue, not growth. If your recovery is excellent, your training produces results. That's the difference between looking the same year after year and actually transforming your physique. So if you want to grow muscle faster and smarter, don't just focus on the hour you spend in the gym. Focus on the other 23 hours in the day. Are you sleeping enough? Are you eating enough protein and calories? Are you fueling your training with carbs and staying hydrated? Are you managing your stress and balancing your training? If the answer is no, then that's your weak link. Fixing recovery and nutrition will accelerate your progress more than any fancy exercise or trendy program. The truth is, training is the easy part. Recovery is the hard part because it requires discipline and consistency outside the gym. It means going to bed on time, prepping your meals, skipping the late-night Netflix binge, saying no to distractions, but the reward is worth it. Stronger lifts, faster growth, better energy, and a physique that actually reflects the work you're putting in. Recovery and nutrition aren't optional. They're the foundation of success. Get them right, and everything else in your training becomes more effective. One of the most underrated aspects of building muscle is technique. Everyone talks about how much weight you're lifting, how many sets you're doing, how often you train, but very few people pay attention to how they're actually moving the weight. And that's a huge mistake, because if your technique is sloppy, the muscle you're trying to grow might not even be doing the work. You can load the bar with plates, you can grind through reps, but if the wrong muscles are carrying the load, your progress stalls. Technique is what makes training effective instead of just exercise. Exercise is random effort. Training is targeted effort, and if you want targeted effort, your form has to be locked in. Let's take an example. Say you want to grow your chest. You set up for a bench press, but instead of keeping your chest tight and controlling the bar, you let your shoulders roll forward, you bounce the bar off your chest, and you flare your elbows wildly. Sure, you moved the weight, but most of that stress went into your shoulders and joints, not your pecs. That's not chest training, that's just surviving the bench press. Now imagine you lowered the bar under control, kept your chest high, drove the bar with the pecs, instead of shifting the load onto other muscles. Suddenly, every rep hits the target muscle. The difference in growth over time is night and day. This principle applies to every lift. Biceps curls. If you're swinging a dumbbell and using your lower back to yank it up, your biceps are barely working. But if you keep your elbows locked in, curl under control, and squeeze the muscle at the top, now the biceps are taking the full hit. Squats? If you dive bomb into the hole, cave your knees, and good morning the weight up, your quads get very little stimulus. But if you stay tight, track your knees, and actually drive with your quads, you'll get the growth you're after. The bottom line is that technique decides whether the muscle you want to grow actually gets trained. And this isn't just about safety, though that's a huge factor too. Proper technique keeps your joints healthy and reduces your risk of injury. But the real point here is effectiveness. Every rep should be sending a signal to the target muscle. If you're just going through the motions, half-assing the form, you're not training with intent. Training with intent means you know what muscle you're trying to hit. You set up properly, and you execute every rep in a way that makes that muscle do the work. Now, people will sometimes say, but I lift heavier when I loosen up my form. That's true. Cheating your reps often allows you to move more weight, but that weight is being lifted by momentum, by other muscles, by anything except the one you're actually trying to grow. It feels satisfying in the moment, but it doesn't build muscle where you want it. Would you rather curl 40-pound dumbbells with bad form and get no growth, or curl 25s with perfect form and actually build bigger biceps? The answer is obvious if your goal is hypertrophy. Strength athletes might get away with a little looseness because their goal is to move maximum weight from point A to point B. But for building muscle, strict technique wins every time. Another part of technique is controlling the range of motion. Half reps are the enemy of growth. If you're only moving the bar a few inches, you're leaving massive gains on the table. Full range of motion ensures the muscle is loaded through its entire length, which creates more stimulus for growth. It doesn't mean you have to go absurdly deep to the point of injury, but it does mean using a controlled full motion where the muscle is stretched and contracted under load. That's how you maximize the signal for growth. Intent also means focusing on the muscle during the rep. This doesn't mean you need to meditate or chant mantras between sets. It means being aware of what you're trying to accomplish. If you're training back, feel your lats pulling the weight, not just your arms yanking it. If you're training triceps, lock your shoulders in place so the triceps are actually extending the arm. This mind-muscle connection isn't just a bodybuilding cliche, it's a tool to make sure your technique is hitting the target. Here's the beauty of proper technique. It allows you to get more out of less. Instead of needing endless sets and weight to force growth, you get maximum stimulus from every rep because the right muscle is working. Over time, that's far more sustainable and far more effective. Sloppy training might give you a pump in the short term, but dialed-in technique gives you long-term growth. It's also worth saying that good technique doesn't mean babying yourself. You still push close to failure. You still lift heavy relative to your strength. You still grind through hard sets. The difference is that you're grinding with control and precision. Heavy, hard training plus perfect technique is the formula for real gains. Heavy, hard training plus sloppy form is the formula for injuries and frustration. So if you want to grow muscle faster and smarter, stop chasing numbers for the sake of ego and start chasing quality. Every rep is a chance to either reinforce good technique or bad technique. Over weeks, months, and years, Those choices add up. If you build the habit of training with perfect form and full intent, you'll be amazed at how much more effective your workouts become. You'll finally feel the right muscles working, you'll stay healthier, and you'll actually see the size and shape you've been chasing. The bottom line is simple. Technique is the delivery system for progressive overload and training volume. Without good technique, those other principles don't matter because the stimulus isn't going where it's supposed to. With good technique, every ounce of effort is directed into growth. Train with intent, own your form, and you'll stop wasting time and start building muscle the way science says it's supposed to be built, faster, smarter, and more effectively than ever before.